1701 here. Today we're going to talk about Series 11 of Doctor Who. Jodie Whittaker's first season as the Doctor, Chris Chibnall's first season as showrunner. And it's a very divisive season in the sense that there are some people out there that like it, there are some people out there that can't stand it. I personally think it's the worst season of Doctor Who that's ever been done. And we're going to look at the good and the bad of Series 11, the things that I think they did right, the things I think they did wrong, and why this season or series, whatever you want to call it, fails. Why I think it fails. Objectively, subjectively, why I think it doesn't work. Now, I find it interesting that of all of the seasons in Modern Who, this is the one that strives to be a classic Doctor Who season in how it's executed. I really think they did try to go with a classic approach. Chris Chibnall is, of course, a classic Doctor Who fan, infamously criticizing Pip and Jane Baker back when Trial of a Time Lord was out. And there are some good ideas in theory, like ideas that on paper sound good, but through the execution of the season just doesn't quite work. So we're going to talk about the good things, and some of the good things are also bad things, and we're going to talk about the bad things. We're going to talk about the good things first. I like the fact that Series 11 is more episodic, that there's not much of a seasonal arc other than the big bad of the season, Tim Shaw, being in the pilot episode, the first episode of the season opener, and coming back for the season finale. Other than that, each episode is kind of its own thing. You can basically watch them almost in any order, even if the ending of episode 1, which is a cliffhanger, picks back up on in episode 2. I do like that. I'm a little over seasonal arcs, especially these very in-your-face seasonal arcs. I didn't mind them as much when they were more subtle, like in the Russell T. Davies 1 era with Bad Wolf, Torchwood, Harold Saxon, where it was just kind of stuff in the background. It didn't really interrupt the flows of the story. That I didn't mind, but when it's more like what we've had since, it just gets a little tedious. I much prefer just episodic television for the most part. Babylon 5 is great serialized, but Babylon 5 is the greatest sci-fi show ever made. So, but other shows like, say, Battlestar Galactica, the remake, which is not as good as the original 1978 show, it just gets lackluster where you have to pretty much watch it all in order. I prefer episodic TV like The Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, Columbo, Perry Mason, stuff like that. Knight Rider, Airwolf. So I liked that on paper they tried to go back more to a classic Who format in the sense that they wanted to do episodic television. Sadly, I don't know if that works very well with the 45-minute format the show does in the modern series, because that is a short run time to really establish characters, especially with a crowded TARDIS and guest characters, and make that work. We'll come back to that. Number 2 on the list is the crowded TARDIS. The crowded TARDIS is good and bad. This is another way I think they harken back to classic Who, introducing 3 companions, much like the first Doctor's era and the 5th Doctor's era, and the 2nd Doctor's era, when you had up to 3 companions. That's an interesting callback to classic Doctor Who, and on paper, I get it. That's not a bad idea on paper. That's why I put this in good, but this also really ends up in the bad category, because the problem with a crowded TARDIS is it doesn't work in modern Doctor Who for multiple reasons. One, again, the format of the show. With this 45-minute format, you cannot sustain introducing not only a new Doctor, but 3 new companions. And while you're trying to learn this new Doctor and all of these new companions, you're having to cram that in with episodes having to tell a story, and you have your guest characters in the episodes that need fleshing out as well. So in a 45-minute period, you're having to flesh out the Doctor, all 3 of her companions, guest characters while also telling a coherent plot. And this season fails to do this. I remember when Series 11 came out, some people said the companions got fleshed out more than the Doctor. And that at the end of Series 11, you still didn't have a good handle on the 13th Doctor because she didn't get enough character development because there's so much going on. It's the same thing with Graham, Ryan, and Yaz. Graham, I think, is the most development, but a lot of that is him dealing with the grief of losing Grace. Whereas Yaz and Ryan, especially, they're just kind of there. They're very two-dimensional. They don't get a lot of fleshing out, especially this season. And the stories suffer because of this, because you never quite connect with this Doctor in this first season, because I still felt like at the end of Series 11, I didn't get this Doctor. I didn't know much about this Doctor. She never really had a lot of Doctor moments, in my opinion. And then the episodes themselves, the guest cast a lot of times didn't always feel fleshed out. Sometimes they did. We'll touch on that. But they didn't feel like they're getting fleshed out. And the plot is having to take all of this into consideration while still trying to tell a good story, which also doesn't always work. To be fair, I think a lot of times character development takes a backseat to the plots of the story, so the plots can breathe a little, even if a lot of them need Deus Ex Machina endings because of the 45-minute runtime. But the crowded TARDIS, while I understand the concept of trying that again, it doesn't work. Also, because modern television just moves at a faster pace. To be honest, the crowded TARDIS worked in the 60s because of the pacing of 60s television. 60s Doctor Who runs at a much slower pace. Not just episode count, where there was a lot. Those 60 seasons had 40-plus episodes typically, or at around 40. Usually right under 40 or right over 40 episodes. That's a lot. I mean, the 60 seasons, they churned out episodes. So you had more episodes to develop characters, and they did run at a slower pace as well. So characters got to have a lot more time to develop with a crowded TARDIS. Even by the 5th Doctor era in the 80s, it was a struggle to have 3 companions, with usually at least one companion suffering. Nyssa. Let's just say Nyssa. With Nyssa never getting fleshed out as much as she should have. Adric, in my opinion, not getting fleshed out as much as he should have. I like Tegan. It felt like Tegan had the most fleshing out of the 5th Doctor era. Turlough, not enough fleshing out, really. You get some in his first couple stories, and then you get some in his final story. But you never get a lot with him as well. And then Perry's just kind of barely there before the end. But really, Tegan is the only 5th Doctor companion I felt like had really good character development. I really feel like Nyssa suffered. I mean, like, they never did anything with the fact that the Master's running around in her husband's body. Like, other than the Keeper of Traken, where it touched on it a little bit, it never really touches on it much after that, and a little bit in Time Flight. You could have done so much with that, and then they just never do. So even by the 80s, which, of course, the 80s pacing had quickened. 80s Doctor Who is paced faster than 60s Doctor Who. But even 80s Doctor Who, which was still being told in that classic format, the crowded TARDIS didn't work. Characters got neglected. So you fast forward to the 2010s and the 2020s, where TV moves at an even faster pace, with a shorter 45-minute episode format, and the crowded TARDIS really doesn't work, because you don't have enough time to develop your characters or your brand new Doctor. Switching back to the good, one of the things I like Series 11 does is no returning villains. I like that. Series 11, I will say this, is a good jumping on point. Not necessarily season quality-wise, but in the sense that it's not bogged down by lore like, say, Season 1 or 2 is. Like, Season 1 and 2 of Ncuti Gatwa's era, not good jumping on point because there's so many callbacks to other things that you could get confused. Series 11 is a good jumping on point in so much as it's not bogged down in the lore. Like, Series 11 doesn't have a lot of callbacks to Classic Who that you just have to know. It might have little Easter eggs, like Kerblam mentioning Unicorn and the Wasp, and also doing a nice Easter egg to the second Doctor. When I say run, run, run! But you don't have to know that. You're not losing anything really not knowing that. It's a good jumping on point for that is not lore heavy. And that's a good idea. Now, it's not a good jumping on point as in it's, again, the worst season the show has ever done. But for someone who has never seen Doctor Who before, they might like it. You know, people who are introduced to the show with Whittaker and Series 11 might have it in high esteem. Whereas someone like me who's been watching since the 80s and grew up with Classic Who looks at it and sees it as a big downgrade. So a lot of that's going to be just weird you got caught up in the show. But I do think it is a good jumping on point because it's not very bogged down in the weight and history of the show. And I think that was a very smart choice. And having no returning villains, I think, is part of that. I mean, season 13 of Classic Doctor Who has no returning villains, and it's probably the best season the show has ever done. So I respect not having any villains coming back and saving the Daleks for the first New Year's special. Next is I like, once again, the throwback to Classic Who with what is practically a first Doctor pure historical almost with Demons of the Punjab, which is a very good episode. And it has a very first Doctor era feel to it. It's probably the closest the show has come to having a pure historical since Black Orchid. I mean, it might not technically be a pure historical, but in spirit it is, because the aliens that are there really are just a red herring, and the events of the story is really just history playing out, which is how a pure historical operates. It's just history playing out. So it's probably the closest we've come to a pure historical since Black Orchid, and it really does, especially having multiple companions, it really does have a first Doctor historical feel to it. Now, it's not perfect. For an episode that focuses on Yaz and her family, I feel like Yaz doesn't get a lot of development there. I feel like her grandmother and her grandmother's husband get far more development than Yaz does. I wish Yaz had gotten a little more character development in it. But it's really well done. The location work looks good. The cinematography is really good. The guest cast is actually really good in this episode, with the guy who plays the husband, the one that we know is fated to die, giving a stellar performance. And even the guy who plays his brother, the one who's kind of been indoctrinated, the actor is doing a phenomenal job there. So it actually has some really good moments there, and I like having something that feels a lot like a First Doctor historical in there a lot. I mentioned here a Classic Who feel, like they go for a Classic Who feel with that, which I like. Again, the episodic nature of it, the First Doctor historical, there are little moments where they, in theory, that seemed like what Chris Chibnall wanted to do was kind of give it a Classic Who feel. It does not completely work with the stories, some of the stories just being so bad. But it's like I see on paper what he was trying to do. Oh, the cinematic look. I had to read my handwriting there. This has a cinematic, much more cinematic look than the show has ever had. This is good and bad. I'm going to touch on the good real quick. It looks more movie quality than Doctor Who's ever looked. You can tell they changed camera, they changed the look of the show. Like, if you look at the Moffat era and the Chibnall era, they look different. I'm not saying one is better or worse, that's subjective, but they look different, with, I think, the Whittaker era having a more cinematic, theatrical look to it. Like, I'd almost just think it was shot in a different aspect ratio, even. It looks like, to me, like it is, almost. But, and the colors tend to pop more this era. But it does have a much more cinematic look than I think Doctor Who had ever had up to this point. Now, the downside of that is, I think there is the argument to be made that it doesn't feel like Doctor Who or look like Doctor Who. Like, you look at that and it just doesn't feel or look like Doctor Who to you. It feels off. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially people, older fans, people who grew up with the classic series, would say that the look of Doctor Who during its classic run, with the cameras used, the camera technique styles of the time, and even the cheaper effects, the low-budget effects, the wobbly sets, even though, to be honest, most of them didn't wobble. But the low-budget nature of the show is one of the key ingredients of the show. It's one of the key pieces of DNA in Doctor Who that make Doctor Who Doctor Who. And I think some people would argue that, well, the modern series as a whole has always looked a higher budget, although the early Russell T Davies 1 era kind of looks much more lower budget than what we got from Moffat and up, which is obviously the case. And some of the CGI in those early seasons of Modern Who have not aged well, let's be honest. So sometimes even the Russell T Davies era has that kind of low-budget look to it. It kind of still gives it that Doctor Who feel. Whereas this, looking so cinematic, looking so higher budget, there is the argument to be made that it doesn't quite feel like Doctor Who and that something is missing. Some key part of that DNA isn't there. Again, that's not going to be something everyone sees. That's purely subjective. But I do think that is a complaint some people, especially fans of the old show, the classic series, I think that is a reasonable argument they could make about it and why they have problems with the Whittaker era. And then we also have let's start with some of the bad. First off, the new TARDIS interior sucks. I hate the TARDIS interior from this era. It is my least favorite TARDIS interior. I think the design is garbage. I think the lighting is garbage. Like, for instance, when the 13th Doctor shows up at the end of the last episode, The Reality War, I actually liked her in Shooty's TARDIS. I felt like she really fit in Shooty's TARDIS really well. Whereas I don't feel like she fits into her own TARDIS well. I don't know why. I just don't like that TARDIS interior at all. It just completely puts me off. Another big problem with this season is the 13th Doctor. Now, again, perhaps due to the crowded nature of the TARDIS, I feel like the Doctor didn't get developed very well because it's having to balance a brand new Doctor and 3 new companions, plus characters, plus guest characters, plus story plot, as I discussed earlier. But I feel like the 13th Doctor, I never have a handle on her very well, especially this first season. Also, it has become apparent to me that I don't think Whittaker knew what she was doing with the role. Now, we know Jodie Whittaker was not a Doctor Who fan before this show. We also know that Chris Chibnall specifically told her not to research the role, not to watch previous episodes. And unfortunately, that was bad advice because it shows. And the reason this has become apparent to me is that she does get better in the role as her time as the Doctor progresses, even up to her cameo in The Reality War, which I thought she was fine in. And there are moments, especially as we get more into her run, where I like her more, where she does things where I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what the Doctor would do, or at least that's what a modern Doctor would do. And so I feel like she understood the character better as it went on. Like, she started figuring the character out, maybe getting feedback on the character. Maybe, I don't know, maybe she did eventually go back and watch some of the old shows. Maybe advice from David. I don't know. But it felt like she clicked with the role more as she went on. But here in this first season, I feel like she doesn't get the character at all. And I even noted here that the 13th Doctor feels uninteresting. And then I wrote writing and acting. I felt like the writing really let her down because I never got a grasp on her Doctor. She has a few of those, what I call try-hard speeches. I heard another YouTuber call it that once, and it's always stuck with me. These try-hard speeches. And occasionally she has a speech where she pulls it off well, but sometimes she has a speech where I'm just... And that happened in the very first episode when she's telling Tim Shaw, get off this planet while you still have a choice. I'm over here going, not buying it. Not buying it. Now, she has some moments, even in the first episode, where I clicked with her. Like, I loved when she was making her Sonic. That was great. That really felt like the Doctor when she was making her Sonic. That little smile when she sees the spoon. I find me a young lady that smiles at me the way the Doctor smiles at a spoon. Oh, yes. But I never quite click with her in this first season. Now, I do like Series 12 a lot better, crappy finale aside. I'm a huge I'm a big fan of Series 12, actually. And I feel like the Doctor gets better that season, too. In some ways, not in others. There's a couple ways I don't like her. That's a whole nother video. But also, this Doctor seems so unsure of herself. She always feels on the back foot, or at least a lot of times feels on the back foot. And then there's the fact she almost gets her companions killed twice this season, not even halfway through the season. She almost gets them all killed at the end of the very first episode, leading into the second episode. And she almost gets them killed at the beginning of the Subaru conundrum with the mine. That's twice. And the only reason they don't die both times is pure coincidence. Luck. Like, both times it's because another ship happened to be passing by in the vastness of space. And that's the only reason they don't die. She's not very good at keeping her companions alive. And I'm not saying this is the only Doctor to have problems with their companions almost dying. A lot of the modern Who companions almost die, and then do die, but not really. And I mean, even the fifth Doctor couldn't save Adric. So, and even the first Doctor couldn't save Katarina. So I'm not saying this is exclusive. But the Doctor nearly gets all of her companions and herself killed like twice in 5 episodes. That's a problem. And then another thing, let me go back to this. Let's see where I wrote this down here. I made another note about the 13th Doctor. Part of the problem with the 13th Doctor, too, is I hear all these excuses for why the way she is. Well, she's neurodivergent. Whatever the fuck that means. Really? Well, she's autistic. Is that the excuse now? Wow, she doesn't really make any sense. Well, she's autistic. Is that what we say now? Seems a bit insulting to autistic people. I mean, my best friend has a child that's autistic. And he's amazing. He's a great kid. And I get that autism is a very wide spectrum. Believe me, I know. But the point is, I think they forget the Doctor is an alien. The Doctor is not human. I think fans of the 13th Doctor really forget this. And I don't mean that as a blanket statement for every fan. But I think some of the fans, and it feels like they're just trying to make excuses for why the 13th Doctor's personality is flippity-gidgety all over the place. She's neurodivergent. Half of them probably don't even know what that means. She's autistic. Why? What? She just strikes me as hyper. She feels like she's doing a Tennant impression, but dialed up to 11. Impersonation, but dialed up to 11. Which her and David are good friends. That doesn't surprise me. I just have problems with that because I don't like people making excuses for why the Doctor's this way. You know, instead, why not give some constructive criticism? You know, tone this Doctor down a little bit. A little bit. I like her when she's hyper sometimes, but a little bit. Pull it back. Give her some self-assurance, especially in Series 12, once Gallifrey is destroyed again, she becomes really self-conscious. This Doctor is very closed off. She doesn't know how to communicate with her companions. That scene with Graham, when he talks about his worry about the cancer coming back, is the poster child of the problem with this Doctor communicating. And that whole line, that doesn't feel like the Doctor to me. That does not, I cannot connect with this Doctor when she can't even express herself openly. I think that's a very poor choice to make the first female Doctor that closed in and not able to communicate. I think that's a very bad choice. I think that's a very bad look. And I feel like this Doctor suffers from that. It's even called out in the Reality War when Shurigatwa tells her "I love you," which that in itself is so self-gratuitous. I swear, I don't know what it is with these shows sometimes when it's self-masturbation. Well, I guess masturbation that it does with nonsense like it's so self-gratifying. When he's basically telling himself, "I love you," and then she's like, "I never say that." And yeah, that's right, 13. You don't. And I have a problem with that. Well, that's part of her character. Well, it's a stupid character choice. Whether it be written that way, whether it be performed that way, it is a bad character choice for the Doctor. And it just doesn't feel like the Doctor to me. Doesn't feel like the Doctor. Going back to bad, Tim Shaw is unintentionally... He's uninteresting. Tim Shaw's uninteresting. I feel like they really fumbled the ball with Tim Shaw because he's kind of the main antagonist of the first episode, the season premiere, and the main antagonist of the season finale. And they try to build him up as this big bad, and he just falls flat. I think there's a reason why he's never been back. His people have never been back. I felt like they were going to build up his people to be more than they were, because I believe they're mentioned in Ghost Monument as well. And it just falls flat. The whole tooth thing, that does nothing for me. The whole bit with his name being Tim Shaw, with her making the joke about Tim Shaw, that really undermines his character. Don't get me wrong, I think that joke's hilarious. I think it's funny. I don't know who Tim Shaw is, but it's funny to me. But it really undermines him as a threat. When you're mocking him and making him into a joke and making his name into a joke, it really undermines the character and takes away the threat of the character, the danger of the character. And while I get he's supposed to be a deadly predator type character, he does kind of strike me as a poor man's predator, keeping his trophies like the predator and that he's on the hunt. I can't fully take it seriously when he's just being made fun of. Also, that scene in the pilot when he kills the one guy who's throwing his burger at him, where he's just like throwing the lid. That's such a stupid scene. Like, who does that? Like, seriously, who does that? Who just throws their food randomly at a guy dressed like that late at night? I mean, maybe the guy was intoxicated a bit. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But I have never seen a Doctor Who character in all of Doctor Who just had it coming. I mean, had it coming. It's like, you know, you look at that guy and you're like, come on, man, what do you think's going to happen? I mean, I'm 5'5", and if you did that to me, I'd hit you in the face too. I have no patience for that kind of nonsense. So, yeah, I mean, you're throwing that food at that guy. What do you expect he's going to do? Yeah, I'm not surprised that happened. He had it coming. It's just so... it's so unbelievable when I was watching that scene. But Tim Shaw never feels... He's just so uninteresting, so boring as a character. And he's kind of the main big bad of the season, if you think about it, since he's the big bad of the season premiere and the big bad of the season finale. What an underwhelming season finale. Once again, a case of a season of Doctor Who not sticking the landing, which, to be fair, the Russell T Davies 2 era, we've had 2 seasons of that. 2 seasons of dreadful season finales, arguably worse than the season finale of season 11 even. But still being uninteresting. That's why I call it the battle of who cares, or the battle of whatever, because who cares? What else we got? Feel like Doctor Who... some of the marketing for Series 11 was questionable. The political messaging can be so problematic in Doctor Who. And I remember one of the pieces of marketing was the ceiling shattering. This is when the 13th Doctor had been announced before the season started. And you see the Doctor and she's like, oops, or sorry, or whatever she says. And it's basically making fun and mocking people who were agitated about the Doctor regenerating into a female, because they felt the Doctor the Doctor should be a male character. It was a good male role model for kids. Peter Davison himself came out and discussed about how problematic it was having a female Doctor, potentially. And it's like they made that commercial just to troll people. And I'm the kind of person that feels like it's incredibly stupid to antagonize your audience. And they still do that. I mean, with the whole touch grass stuff. If you don't want to watch, don't watch, whatever. Why would you purposely antagonize your audience? That is an incredibly stupid thing to do. And I remember seeing that marketing and just being like, that doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of people who, if you don't antagonize them, would at least give it a chance just to see. And a lot of us did anyway. I watched the Whittaker era. But there are going to be other people who are just going to feel like, you know, they're being mocked or made fun of. And, you know, if you treat people like crap, they're not going to watch your show. You know, if you call them sexist and racist and Nazis and all this other non-stuff, they're not going to tune into your show for that, understandably. And then you have the episodes themselves. There's some bad ones this season. The Woman Who Fell to Earth, I don't think is the best introduction episode for a doctor. I don't think it's a bad episode. It's kind of just, I'm a little kinder. It's one of those I'm a little kinder towards fresh off a rewatch. And it definitely has some good moments in it. It has some bad moments. Again, it has a very uninteresting villain. Also, the girl's brother, the one that's trying to find out what happened to his sister, his death's kind of stupid. Because I don't know why the guy brings this thing here and doesn't have anything to defend himself. Like, you figured you'd go through all that trouble to bring that pod there. You'd have a shotgun, some pistols standing by. No, that guy's an idiot. It's just kind of middle of the road, maybe a little under middle of the road. And then you have the Ghost Monument, which I really like. Really good guest cast in the Ghost Monument. Really, really like the Ghost Monument. Good guest cast. Love the living bandages idea. Wish they'd done more with that. Love the acidic water. Wish they'd done more with that. That's just kind of mentioned and then we don't hear about it again. Like the idea. And then I liked the idea of the Ghost Monument being the Tardis. That was really nice. One of the things I didn't care for in the episode was just Whittaker. She's just kind of there. Rosa, I'm not the hugest fan of. I think it's objectively pretty good in places, but I have my own issues with it that I've discussed before. Also, it really feels like a lot of political messaging in this season. Arachnids in the UK is just dreadful. Just dreadful, 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 dreadful. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a little break there because Series 11 is so boring that it's also boring to talk about. It gets very boring just to talk about. But getting back to the episodes, Arachnids in the UK, dreadful. One of the worst episodes of Doctor Who ever made. Of course they have to do a Trump stand-in. I don't know why. I give zero craps about what Britain thinks of Trump. Seriously. Look, people in Britain, you guys, a lot of you know, you got your own problems y'all need to get sorted out. I'm not saying we don't have our problems here we need to get sorted out. To be fair, we've had problems here we've needed to get sorted out from the previous term as well. But yeah, I just, and then they're like, well, he even mentions Trump, so he's not a Trump stand-in. He's obviously a Trump stand-in. And it's just, and to be fair, the actor playing the guy plays the part well. What they're doing with it, the actor's fine, but it just doesn't need to be there. Also, the episode just sucks. Also, the Doctor is very morally gray here. Don't you shoot that pitiful creature. Let it suffocate instead. And didn't she just blow up all the babies or suffocate all the babies? The Doctor is morally in an odd place in this story. It's just badly written. It's badly written. It's uninteresting. And I don't care what the people who run Doctor Who think of Donald Trump. I don't. I doubt Donald Trump gives a crap about the people who run Doctor Who. And then we have the Subaru conundrum. This one is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the guest casts are good. Some of the guest casts are not. The main nurse is all right. I liked her. The doctor at the beginning, I liked him. The one that had this nice rapport with the doctor. Like when she's like, yeah, I have a little trouble with authority. And the doctor's like, yeah, I'm getting that. I liked him. I hate that he died so early because I liked him. Him and 13 had a good rapport. Of course, the Doctor almost gets her companions killed right at the beginning. And they only get saved because the ship happens to be passing by. The guy playing the android is really good. I buy that is totally an android. But like the brother and sister duo, don't really get into them. The acting's just not really there for me, especially the sister. Okay, bro. Not, The set design is nice. I really like the sets a lot. I like the fact that the pating is not malevolent. It's more just hungry. Its danger comes as a side effect of the fact it can eat almost anything. Although I do love the fact it throws the Sonic back up. Its design, I'm not overly keen on. It's like they're going for a Baby Yoda thing. I can't remember if this came out before or after Mandalorian. It's like everybody wants a Baby Yoda now. A Grogu. And I don't know, the design just... It's almost like the story is written for the design to look a little more sinister. To where it not being malevolent is a twist. But instead you take one look at it and you're just like, it's an adorable little baby that's going to eat everything. Yaz is actually better in this one because she hasn't become lovesick puppy Yaz yet. So I like the fact she actually questions the doctor here. Like, you know, the doctor's like, I'll do this, this, this. And Yaz is like, are you sure this is going to work? Or when 13 is talking about the warp drive and she's having a moment, I'm ready to hand her a towel. And she's really excited about it. And even Yaz is like, yeah, fine, we get it. Which is pretty much, for once, Yaz is the audience. Because here, as the audience, we're sitting here going, we get it, move on. So there is some of that in there. I like the set design, though. Also, the pregnant guy. It's not like they're even trying to hide the fact that they just want to emasculate men here. The white guy, the pregnant man, of course, it's a white guy. No. Well, it's the future. Anything's possible. Sure it is. I'm trying to remember. Episode 6 is Demons of the Punjab, which I like. I like Demons of the Punjab. Strong episode. Kerblam is good. I like Kerblam. Again, it has a couple little callbacks, but they're just little Easter egg callbacks. I don't have a problem with the political messaging because I don't see any political messaging. People are like, well, it's sending a mixed message because of Amazon, and stop looking for that. Stop looking for the messaging. Maybe there's no messaging there and it's all in your head. You know, what was it 8 said about, that's what he likes about humans, always seeing things that aren't there? I never once was sitting here thinking, Amazon! Never! I like the twist that it's not the company that's the bad person, it's the one guy. Plus it's, you know, green deadly bubble wrap, and the Ark in Space fan in me is going, yes. It's not as good as Ark in Space. Kerblam is a nice B-tier story. It's not essential Doctor Who, but it's not bad. I put it a little above average. It's fun. I love the robot design of the little robots running around. I like the twists and turns it takes. I don't like the one girl dying when she pops the bubble wrap. I didn't like that. But other than that, I like it. I like the guest cast. Jodie's good in it. The regular cast are good in it. I also really like the one guy who is working for his daughter with the necklace, the one who gets killed. I liked him. I was really sad when he died. I like the actor playing him. It's a nice story that, again, I turn off my brain to any political messages that may or may not have been intended. And I just enjoy it for a fun episode, because that's the reason I watch Doctor Who, is to escape from reality. Open your eyes. Look up to the sky and see. Then we have It Takes You Away. Is that the next one? I can't remember which one's next between It Takes You Away and Witchfinder. So It Takes You Away is garbage. So we have the blind girl whose dad is constantly gone. The neglectful dad, who's of course a white man. Is not there. He's not a very good character. I mean, you kind of understand what he's doing. I just don't like this episode. I think I've watched it once and then caught cliff notes of it from reactors. The bit at the frog at the end. See this face? This is the face of someone who's not impressed. I know there are some people who are like, this episode is so good because of this, and this. And I'm sitting here going, hey, you know what? I'm glad you got that out of it. You know what I got out of it? No, this sucks. It really, really sucks. Man, it sucks. Yes, it's dreadful. The bit with the frog, I was so bored. I'm not saying that the idea of a sentient universe that can't interact with our own is not an interesting idea on paper. It's just executed badly. The bit when they're in between the realms with the one guy who looks gremlin-y or something, uninteresting, don't care. I just don't really like it. It has a couple nice moments, like I like the fact the blind girl realized she was writing something and not telling her. That was a cool little moment. The actress playing the blind girl, who I believe is blind in real life, she's very good. I liked her. It's nice to see Grace again, because I like Grace. Or to see sort of Grace again. I like that. But for the most part, junk. Then we have the Witchfinders. I don't get into this one either. It has good parts. First off, I absolutely love, with Alan Cummings, is that his name? Alan is fantastic as King James I. He is the highlight of the episode. He is hilarious. It's like he plays it hilarious and maybe a bit over the top, but not parody over the top. It's very Harrison Chase from Seeds of Doom. Just enough to where there's a little bit of over-the-top camp to it without it running into parody or just feeling like a caricature. It's just that perfect balance. And I love it. Especially when it looks like he's hitting on Ryan. That's hilarious to me. And then the actress playing the main antagonist, before she changes and after she changes, she's really good. The actress, my hat's off to her. Playing the woman before she changes and then once she becomes the entity, she's really good. And I like the fact that it does touch on the fact that the Doctor's having to deal with things differently because she is a woman. That is a real thing that would have happened then. So I like the fact that the Doctor is kind of having to work around that here. It does it in a way that feels natural and doesn't feel, at least to me. But just, I don't know why I don't care for it. It's just the story itself doesn't do much for me. Also, the design of the mud creatures, like the one girl's aunt or grandmother or whoever it is, I don't like the muck creatures. I don't know why. It just puts me off. And then just the story does nothing for me. And then there's the Battle of Nobody Cares, which I've already talked about, because it's boring. It's boring. It has an uninteresting boss that I can't take seriously, despite how it's designed to make him some big bad, and he can do some deadly stuff. I never feel threatened by him. And I don't get the tooth thing. That's just, it feels like cheap discount Predator, without being anywhere near as cool as Predator, of course. And then, I do like Graham's dilemma at the end, his moral dilemma, because he obviously wants to kill the creature, and he is the better man, and proves that at the end, which I like. I did like that. But other than that, it's just uninteresting. And again, part of that is the problem. It just doesn't stick the landing, which is something Modern Who has struggled with probably, I'd argue, since Twice Upon a Time. And, well, The Doctor Falls. World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls especially. And Twice Enough Time, if you want to count that as kind of an epilogue. It was probably the last time Doctor Who really stuck the landing to a season. Because all of Whittaker's season finales have been pretty bad. Timeless Children was garbage. The Battle of Whatever was garbage. The end of Flux isn't that great. Episode 6. I might not call it flat out garbage, although what happens with Skeletor and Azure is certainly garbage. They just we shall ascend, and they grew. The season 1 finale, garbage. The season 2 finale, garbage. Both of Shooty's season finales, hot garbage. So series 11, I would say, has 3 good episodes. Like, good episodes. 1, maybe 2 decent episodes. Like, okay episodes. Or maybe just below okay. But then you got a bunch of crap in there. You got a bunch of crap, especially with Arachnids in the UK. It Takes You Away. And the Battle of Whatever being straight up crap. Woman Who Fell to Earth. D, C tier. Subaru Conundrum. C tier. It's a mixed bag. It has things I like, things I don't. Maybe C or D tier, depending on what I'm judging it is. Sometimes you have to judge Modern Who on a curve. And then Rosa could objectively be good, but I have my own issues with it, which I've discussed before. But basically it boils down to... This season, you never really get a good grasp of this Doctor because of the crowded Tardis, which just doesn't work in modern times. You really just need one companion. Maybe another companion for a couple episodes like Jack was. You need, especially with this shorter run, because even in Series 11, we had went from 13 episodes to 10, so you're already getting the beginning of that episode chopping with just 10 episodes. You really don't get the companions fleshed out that well. Like, I get Graham a little bit, but a lot of that's his grief over Grace. You get very few good stories. You have, basically, I think Series 11 is you have some really good ideas on paper, such as no returning villains. No returning villains. More episodic content without a story arc, which I like. Trying to go back to a crowded TARDIS like the first Doctor era or the fifth Doctor era. Like, I understand the theory of that on paper. It just doesn't work. So there are ideas there, but you don't have good stories. I'm getting tired again because I hate talking about Series 11. Episode 2... Nope, I'm out. So yeah, that's just kind of where I fall on it. A lot of good ideas on paper that just, the execution of them doesn't work because there's a lot of bad episodes with uninteresting villains. Like if you had done no returning villains but had some interesting villains like classic season 13 did, you could have had a great season. But you never really get a feel for this Doctor. It's painfully obvious that Jodie Whittaker wasn't a Doctor Who fan. And she's a good actress. She's great in Broadchurch. She's great in that episode of Black Mirror she's in. And she does get better in the role as her tenure goes on. I actually enjoyed her cameo in whatever the season finale was, Reality War. Even if I feel like she's just so flippity-gidgety. I think the 13th Doctor, which to be fair, I could be Jodie Whittaker too, has like a 10-second attention span. It's kind of adorable, really. But I feel like here in Series 11, she's at her worst in the sense that I just feel like she doesn't have a grasp on the character. She doesn't have room to grow the character. She doesn't have good stories to grow the character, and she has too many companions that she's having to share airtime with guest characters and trying to form plots to a story. So because of this, I think Series 11 is probably the weakest series/season of Doctor Who we have ever gotten. You have a weak daughter. A doctor? I'm tired. Talking about Series 11 really drains me. You have a weak Doctor. You have weak companions, because they just don't have time to get fleshed out. Nothing against the actors. You have only about 3, what I would say, really good stories out of 10. So less than a third. And then you have some truly atrocious ones, with Arachnids of the UK being one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever made. And again, I don't like It Takes You Away either. And then the finale is pretty irredeemable. So that's 3 of them right there that are straight up pretty much garbage. And that's also almost a third, a little less than a third. And then you have a brand new look, you have brand new music. The music's fine. I actually don't mind the music. The music's very fitting for what's going on screen. And the look of it, the cinematography is going to be hit and miss with people. So I want to know what you think of Series 11 and what I've talked about here today. The good, the bad, and what ultimately I think is a weak season, arguably the weakest the show has ever put out. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. All the other fun stuff, links to the Patreon, the Amazon wishlist, the Amazon UK wishlist, and the P.O. Box are all down in the description below if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney, Sam Venning, Finn Perkins, and Unknown289. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It's very much appreciated. I also would appreciate you clicking the like button and the subscribe button as well. As always, thank you for watching.